The Valkyrie had conquered 47 species across the galaxy. Their empire stretched across 3 galactic arms, and their warships blocked out the stars wherever they went. No civilization had ever stopped them. No species had ever said no and lived to tell the story. Ambassador Cathrall stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the blue planet below. Earth, the natives called it. A small, wet world circling an ordinary yellow star. His scouts had studied the humans for several months. They were clever creatures, yes. They had split the atom and touched their moon. But compared to the Valkyrie, they were children playing with sticks. "Send the standard message," Cathrall ordered. His voice was calm. He had done this many times before. The communication officer pressed several buttons. Across Earth, every screen, every radio, every device with a speaker came alive with the Valkyrie ultimatum. The message was simple. Surrender now and become slaves. Refuse and become dust. Cathrall waited patiently for the response. He knew what would come. First there would be panic. Then there would be attempts to negotiate. Finally, there would be surrender. It always happened the same way. But Earth did not follow the pattern. The response came from something called the United Defense Council. Cathrall's translator processed the message. It contained only 2 words. "Come try." Cathrall stared at the screen for a long moment. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever responded this way. He felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as curiosity. "Interesting," he said softly. Then he turned to his fleet commander. "Begin the invasion." 3,000 Valkyrie warships descended upon Earth. Their weapons could crack continents. Their soldiers numbered in the millions. They expected resistance. They expected nuclear weapons and crude missiles. They expected a fight that would last perhaps a few days. They were right about some of it. The humans did fight. Their weapons were primitive, but their soldiers were fierce. They used their nuclear bombs and their missiles and their tanks. They fought in the streets and in the fields and in the mountains. For 72 hours, Earth burned with the fury of desperate resistance. But it was not enough. It could never be enough that the Valkyrie had better weapons. They had shields that stopped bullets and armor that laughed at explosions. They had orbital cannons that could turn cities to glass. One by one, the great capitals of Earth fell. New York, Beijing, Moscow, London. Each one became fire and ash and memory dot by the end of the 3rd day. The human military was broken. Their leaders were dead or hiding. Their people ran through the ruins like frightened animals. Ambassador Cathrall looked down at the burning world and felt satisfied. "Begin the occupation," he ordered. Standard protocols. Work camps for the healthy. Disposal for the rest. His ships landed across the planet. Millions of Valkyrie soldiers spread out to claim their prize. They rounded up humans by the thousands and marched them to newly built camps. It was efficient work. The Valkyrie had done it many times before, but something was wrong. Cathrall noticed it first in the reports from his ground commanders. The humans were not behaving like a conquered species. They should have been broken. They should have been begging for mercy. Instead, they were quiet. Too quiet. "They smile at us," one commander reported. "Even as we put chains on them, they smile. They whisper to each other," another said. "They whisper and they laugh. It is not the laughter of mad creatures. It is the laughter of those who know a secret." Cathrall dismissed these concerns. Trauma affected different species in different ways. The humans were simply in shock. They would learn their place soon enough. But deep beneath the surface of the ruined Earth, something was happening. In bunkers buried under mountains, humans gathered in the darkness. These were not ordinary survivors hiding from the enemy. These were soldiers of a different kind. Scientists and warriors working together on a project that had been kept secret for decades. Project Fenrir, they called it. The project had begun long before the Valkyrie arrived. Human scientists had always wondered about the strange potential hidden in human DNA. Humans were not the strongest creatures on their planet. They were not the fastest. But somehow, they had conquered every other species. Somehow, they had risen to rule their world. The scientists discovered why. Buried deep in human genes were abilities that had been sleeping for thousands of years. The ability to go without sleep for weeks. The ability to ignore pain completely. The ability to think and react faster than any computer. And something else. Something darker. Humans had evolved as predators. Not the kind that chased prey across open ground. The kind that planned and waited and struck without mercy. The kind that could track an enemy for months and never give up. The kind that felt no fear when the killing began. But these abilities were dangerous. Early humans who used them fully became monsters. They killed everything around them, including each other. So evolution built cages inside the human mind. Walls that kept the monster locked away. Rules that made humans feel guilt and fear and hesitation. Civilization was built on those cages. Project Fenrir was designed to open them. In the bunkers, volunteers lined up for the procedure. They knew what it would cost them. They would become something not quite human. They would lose parts of themselves that they could never get back. But they had watched their families die. They had watched their cities burn. They had watched their world fall. They did not care about the cost anymore. The scientists worked quickly. Needles and machines and strange lights filled the underground rooms. The volunteers screamed as their bodies changed. Their muscles grew denser. Their eyes became sharper. Their minds became faster. But the true change was inside. The walls in their minds came down. The guilt disappeared. The fear vanished. The hesitation died. What remained was something ancient and terrible. Something that humanity had spent 10,000 years learning to control. The first volunteer opened his eyes after the procedure. The scientist in front of him stepped back in sudden fear. The volunteer's eyes were still human. But what looked out from behind them was not. "How do you feel?" the scientist asked. The volunteer smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Hungry," he said. Above them, the Valkyrie continued their occupation. They sorted humans into camps. They counted their new slaves. They sent reports of easy victory back to their empire. They had no idea what was coming. They had studied human technology. They had studied human cities. They had studied human weapons. They had not studied human history. If they had, they would have learned something important. Humans were never more dangerous than when they had nothing left to lose. And humans with nothing left to lose had just been given the keys to their cages. The Valkyrie had chosen war. They were about to learn what that really meant. Commander Drethka stood in the middle of what used to be Chicago. The human city was mostly ruins now. Broken buildings reached toward the gray sky like dead fingers. Smoke still rose from fires that had burned for weeks. It was ugly, but it was conquered. That was all that mattered. His soldiers patrolled the streets in groups of 10. They carried pulse rifles and wore armor that could stop any human weapon. They were the elite of the Valkyrie military. Each one had conquered at least 3 worlds. They feared nothing. But lately, something strange was happening. "Report," Drethka said into his communicator. "Patrol 7 has not checked in," came the reply. "They were due 2 hours ago." Drethka frowned. This was the 3rd patrol this week that had simply vanished. No distress calls. No weapons fire. No bodies. They just disappeared. "Send the search team," he ordered. "Commander, we sent a search team yesterday." For Patrol 4, they also did not return. A cold feeling spread through Drethka's body. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had fought species with claws and fangs and poison. He had never felt afraid. He felt afraid now. That night, a package arrived at his command center. A soldier brought it to his desk. It was a small box wrapped in human cloth. Drethka opened it carefully. Inside were neural cores. Every Velthari soldier had one in their skull. It recorded their memories and could be used to identify them after death. The box contained 37 cores, arranged in a perfect circle. A note sat on top of them. It was written in perfect Velthari script. "We're just getting started." Drethka stared at the note for a long time. Then he began to scream orders at his soldiers. Across the planet, similar things were happening. Velthari patrols vanished in the ruins of London. Supply convoys disappeared on the roads of China. Communication towers went dark in South America. And always, there were the packages. Boxes of neural cores. Notes written in perfect Velthari script. Ambassador Kethrol received the reports on his flagship with growing concern. He had conquered 47 species. Not one of them had resisted like this. Not one of them had fought back after defeat. "They are primitive insurgents," his advisor said. "They will tire. They will make mistakes. We will find them and kill them." But they did not tire. They did not make mistakes. And the Velthari could not find them. The humans came from the shadows. They struck without warning and killed without sound. Velthari soldiers with the best armor and the best weapons died before they could fire a single shot. And the humans who killed them were not normal. A Velthari captain named Yethra survived one of the attacks. He was found 3 days later, hiding in a collapsed building. His eyes were empty, and his hands would not stop shaking. "They are not human," he whispered to his rescuers. "I saw one take a pulse blast to the chest. The wound burned through muscle and bone. The creature looked down at the hole in its body and laughed. Then it killed 6 of my soldiers with its bare hands." "You were seeing things," his commander said. "Battle stress." "No," Yethra said. "I saw clearly. They feel no pain. They feel no fear. And they do not stop. Ever. They are not human anymore. They are something else. Something worse." The captain was right. From the bunkers beneath the earth, the revenants had emerged. That was what the other survivors called them. The volunteers from Project Fonrare. The humans who had opened their cages. There were only 2,000 of them at first. 2,000 against millions of Velthari soldiers. The numbers should have meant nothing, but the revenants were not normal soldiers. They could run for days without rest. They could see in complete darkness. They could hear a heartbeat from 50 meters away. Their minds processed combat information so fast that the Velthari seemed to move in slow motion. And they had no limits. Normal humans hesitated before killing. Normal humans felt fear when outnumbered. Normal humans got tired and made mistakes. The revenants did none of these things. They killed with perfect efficiency. They attacked impossible odds with absolute calm. They fought until their bodies literally fell apart, and even then they kept trying to kill. But the revenants were not alone. Across the planet, ordinary humans began to rise. Not enhanced, not modified, just angry. Farmers who had watched their families die picked up hunting rifles and started shooting. Factory workers built bombs from chemicals and scrap metal. Children too small to fight served as scouts, slipping through gaps in Velthari sensor networks. The entire species had become a weapon. Kethrol ordered a demonstration of force. He chose the European continent. 40 million humans still lived there among the ruins. His ships positioned themselves in orbit and charged their main weapons. "Surrender the insurgents," he broadcast to the planet, "or watch your people burn." No response came. Kethrol gave the order. Beams of fire fell from the sky. The European continent became a sea of flame. 40 million humans died in a single hour. Cities that had stood for centuries became ash. Forests that had grown for millennia became dust. Kethral watched the destruction and felt satisfied. Now the humans would understand. Now they would bow. The response came 3 days later. Kethral was on his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest and most powerful ship in the Velthari fleet. 3,000 soldiers guarded it at all times. Shields and sensors protected it from any threat. The revenant who infiltrated it was named Sarah. Before Project Fenrir, she had been a kindergarten teacher. She had liked painting and growing flowers and reading stories to children. She had been kind and gentle and afraid of spiders. That woman was gone now. The new Sarah moved through the Eternal Dominion like smoke. She killed sentries without sound. She bypassed sensors without effort. She walked through 3,000 soldiers like they were not their dot when she reached the bridge. Kethral was alone. His guards lay behind her, their neural cores already cooling. He turned to face her and felt true terror for the first time in his life. Sarah was covered in blood. Her armor was torn. A Velthari blade stuck out of her shoulder. She did not seem to notice it. She walked toward him slowly. Kethral backed against the wall. He had nowhere to run, but she did not kill him. Instead, she held out a data chip. "Coordinates," she said. Her voice was calm and flat. "Take your ships there. See what we have done. Then tell your Empress something." "What?" Kethral whispered. Sarah smiled. It was the smile of something that had forgotten how to be human. "Tell her that for every human life she takes, we will take 10,000 Velthari. These coordinates are her first lesson." Then she walked away. She walked through the ship and killed another 200 soldiers on her way out. She reached an escape pod and launched into space. Velthari ships tried to shoot her down. They all missed. Kethral stood alone on his bridge for a long time. Then he looked at the coordinates on the data chip. He recognized them. They were the coordinates of Keth Prime, a Velthari colony world. Population 800 million. When his ships arrived, they found only silence. Every city was dark. Every building was empty. 800 million. Velthari were dead. No, weapons had been used. The humans had simply visited. Kethral fell to his knees and wept. The Velthari had brought war to Earth. Humanity had brought extinction to the stars. High Admiral Yethkrul stared at the holographic display and tried to understand how everything had gone wrong. His fleet orbited Earth at a safe distance now. Not because they were winning, because they were afraid. 3,000 ships had come to conquer this small blue world. Less than 2,000 remained. The display showed red markers across 4 star systems. Each marker was a Velthari ship that had been destroyed. Each marker was a crew that would never return home. The humans were no longer just fighting on Earth. They had taken the war to the stars. How? Yethkrul said to his officers. They had no ships. They had no fleet. How are they destroying us in space? His chief scientist stepped forward nervously. They learned, Admiral. They captured some of our vessels in the early days of the occupation. We thought they were too primitive to understand our technology. We were wrong. Wrong how? They reverse-engineered our systems in weeks. Work that took our ancestors centuries. They did it in weeks. And then they improved it. Their ships are now faster than ours. Their weapons hit harder. Their shields last longer. Yethkrul slammed his fist against his command console. That is not possible. They are primitives. They had not even left their own star system. With respect, Admiral, they are not primitives. We made a mistake. We looked at their technology and assumed they were inferior. We did not look at their history. Their history? The scientist pulled up files on the display. Images of human wars appeared. Battles fought with swords and spears. Battles fought with guns and bombs. Battles fought in trenches and jungles and deserts. They have been fighting each other for 10,000 years, the scientist said. They have spent their entire existence perfecting the art of killing. Every generation created new weapons. Every war taught new lessons. They did not have spacefaring technology because they were primitive. They did not have it because they were too busy fighting to build it. And now they have our technology, Yethkrul said slowly. Yes, and they are very, very good at fighting. The Admiral looked back at the display. More red markers appeared even as he watched. Another convoy destroyed. Another colony gone dark. What do they want? He asked quietly. Territory? Resources? We can negotiate. We can give them whatever they want. I interrogated captured humans before they escaped, said one of his commanders. A young officer who still had bandages on his face. I asked them that question. I asked what they wanted, and they laughed at me. One of them said they did not want anything from us. She said they just wanted us to understand. She said they wanted our great-grandchildren to tell stories about this war and tremble. Yethkrul felt cold. They do not want to win. They want to make an example of us. Yes, Admiral. I believe that is correct. The tactical officer suddenly gasped. Admiral, we have contacts. Many contacts. They are coming out of hyperspace near the fleet. The display lit up with new markers. Human ships. Dozens of them. They were smaller than Velthari vessels, but they moved with terrible speed. They cut through the formation like sharks through a school of fish. All ships. Defensive formation. Yethkrul shouted. Return fire. Destroy them. But the human ships did not fight like normal enemies. They did not form lines or follow patterns. Each ship moved independently, attacking from different angles, striking weak points with perfect precision. They seemed to know exactly where every Velthari ship was weakest. Explosions filled the display. Velthari ships died in clusters. Distress calls flooded the channel's dot. Then the human ships pulled back. They vanished into hyperspace as quickly as they had appeared. The battle had lasted 12 minutes. 47 Velthari ships were destroyed. The humans have lost 3. Yethkrul sat in his command chair and felt his hope dying. This was not a war. This was an execution. On Earth, the occupation was falling apart. Velthari soldiers no longer patrolled in small groups. They stayed in their bases and prayed for rescue. The revenants came every night. They killed officers. They destroyed equipment. They left messages written in blood on the walls. Leave, the messages said. Leave or die. But the Velthari could not leave. Their fleet was in chaos. Their supply lines were cut. Their commanders were dead or missing. They were trapped on a planet that had become a hunting ground. The ordinary humans were almost as dangerous as the revenants now. They had learned from watching the enhanced soldiers. They set traps and ambushes. They used the ruins of their cities as weapons. They showed no mercy because they had been shown no mercy. A Velthari general named Kethmara tried to negotiate. He sent a message to the human resistance, offering peace. He promised to release prisoners and end the occupation. The response came in the form of a video that showed Kethmara soldiers. All 2,000 of them. They were hanging from the ruins of buildings across what had once been Paris. They were still alive when they were hung. They had not been alive for long after. A human voice spoke over the video. It was calm and cold. You burned Europe. 40 million of our people died. This is just the beginning of our response. Every Velthari on Earth will die. Every Velthari in this system will die. And then we will come for the rest of your empire. We will teach your species a lesson that will last for 1,000 years. Kethmara fled Earth that night. He took a shuttle and ran for the fleet. His shuttle was found 2 days later, drifting in space. The general was inside, still strapped to his seat. His eyes had been removed. A note was attached to his chest. Running will not save you. Yethkrul received the news and felt something break inside him. He was a high admiral. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed civilizations. He had believed himself invincible. He was not invincible. None of them were. He opened a communication channel to the Velthori homeworld. Empress Velthora appeared on the screen. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed fear. High Admiral. Report. We are losing, Empress. Not just the battle. Everything. The humans are not like any enemy we have faced. They do not fight for survival. They fight for revenge. They fight to make us afraid. And they are succeeding. What do you recommend? Yethkrul paused. He thought about his fleet, his soldiers, his family back home. I recommend we negotiate, he said. Immediately, we offer them everything they want. Territory, technology, slaves from other species, anything. And if they refuse? Yethkrul was silent for a long moment. Then I recommend we run, Empress. We take whatever we can save, and we run to the far side of the galaxy. Because these creatures will not stop. They will hunt us across the stars. They will destroy everything we have built. And they will enjoy doing it. The Empress stared at him through the screen. You are afraid, High Admiral. Yes, Empress. I am, and if you are wise, you will be afraid too. We chose to make war against these humans. We did not know what they were. We did not know what they could become. And what are they? Yethkrul thought about the revenants, the ships, the messages written in blood, the colony world full of corpses. They are vengeance, Empress, pure and absolute. And we woke them up. The connection ended. Yethkrul sat alone in the darkness of his bridge dot around him. His fleet continued to die. Empress Velthora sat on her throne and listened to the screaming of her advisors. The great council chamber of the Velthori homeworld had not seen such chaos in 1,000 years. Generals blamed admirals. Admirals blamed scientists. Everyone blamed everyone else. Silence. The Empress commanded that the room fell quiet. Every eye turned to the throne. Velthora looked at the holographic display floating above the council table. It showed the current state of the empire. Red lights marked territories that had fallen silent. There were many red lights now. Tell me again, she said. Tell me how we are losing to one species from one world. The Minister of War stepped forward. His hands were shaking. They have destroyed or captured over 2,000 of our ships, Empress. 14 colony worlds have gone completely silent. Our supply lines across the core territories are under constant attack. And the rebellion is spreading. Rebellion? The species we conquered before. They are watching what the humans do. They are seeing that we can be hurt. They are rising against us. We are fighting on 100 fronts now. The Empress closed her eyes. The Empire had stood for 3,000 years. It had crushed every enemy that dared to stand against it. And now it was crumbling because of one small world. The humans, she said. What do they want? Have they made demands? No, Empress. We have sent messages. We have offered peace. We have offered to return their world and leave them alone. They do not respond. Not once. Once, 3 days ago, we received a transmission from a human commander. A female. She said only one thing. What did she say? The minister swallowed hard. She said, you killed 40 million of us in Europe. We have killed 800 million of you so far. We are not finished. We will never be finished. You could surrender every ship and every world and every soldier. It would not matter. This is not about winning anymore. This is about making sure no species ever threatens humanity again. You are becoming a lesson, a warning, an example. The Empress felt the words settle into her mind like poison. They are not fighting a war, she said slowly. They are sending a message to the entire galaxy. Yes, Empress. I believe that is correct. They want every species who hears of this conflict to know what happens when you attack Earth. They want our name to become a story parents tell children to frighten them. They want us to be remembered as victims, not conquerors. One of the generals stepped forward. He was old and scarred from many battles. We can still win this, Empress. We have more ships, more soldiers, more resources. If we gather everything and strike at Earth directly, we can burn the whole planet to ash. We can end them, can we? The Empress turned to her chief scientist. Could we destroy Earth? The scientist shifted nervously. Perhaps, Empress. But the humans have spread now. They have ships. They have taken Veltari technology and made it their own. Even if we destroy their homeworld, survivors will remain. And they will never stop hunting us. Never. There is something else, Empress, the Minister of Intelligence said. He was pale, and his voice was thin. We have interrogated human prisoners, those we could capture alive. What we learned is troubling. Speak. The enhanced humans, the ones they call revenants, are dangerous. But they are not the real threat. The real threat is what they represent. The humans chose to become monsters to defeat us. They looked at the darkest parts of themselves and set them free. They sacrificed their humanity to win this war. So they are desperate. No, Empress. They are not desperate. They are committed. There's a difference. A desperate species fights until hope dies. A committed species fights until there is nothing left to fight. The humans have accepted that this war will cost them everything. And they do not care. They would rather die as monsters than live as slaves. The council chamber was silent. Every Veltari in the room was thinking the same thing. The Empire had conquered species that begged for mercy. It had crushed species that fought bravely but lost hope. It had never faced a species that would destroy itself just to destroy its enemy. What would you have me do? The Empress asked quietly. The general who had spoken earlier stepped forward again. Fight! We are Veltari. We do not surrender. We do not run. And die, the scientist said. We fight and we die. All of us, our children, our grandchildren. They will hunt us to the edges of the galaxy. They will find every colony and every outpost. They will not stop until our species is nothing but memory. The Empress raised her hand for silence. There is another option, she said. One that no Veltari has ever considered. We could apologize. The council chamber erupted in shock. Apologize? The word had almost no meaning in Veltari culture. The strong did not apologize to the weak. The conqueror did not beg forgiveness from the conquered. Empress, that is madness. The general shouted. We would look weak. Every species in the galaxy would see us bow down. They would all rise against us. They are already rising against us, the Empress said calmly. The humans have already made us look weak. The only question now is whether we survive looking weak or die looking strong. She stood from her throne and walked to the holographic display. With one hand, she zoomed in on Earth, the small blue world that had caused so much death. Contact the humans, she ordered. Not our military channels. Their civilian frequencies. I will speak to their leaders directly. I will offer complete withdrawal from their territory. I will offer reparations for the damage we have caused. I will offer them whatever they want. And if they refuse? The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then we will know that they truly intend to destroy us. And we must decide if we want to die fighting or die running. She turned to face her council. But I do not believe they will refuse. The humans are vengeful, yes. But they are not stupid. They have lost billions of their own people. They are tired and wounded. If we offer them real peace, real justice, I believe they will accept. The Minister of War looked uncertain. How can you be sure? Because they are human, the Empress said. They are capable of terrible cruelty. But they are also capable of mercy. They would not have built a civilization if they were purely monsters. They would have destroyed themselves long ago. The monsters inside them are weapons. They can be put away when the war is over. She walked back to her throne and sat down. Send the message. Tell them the Empress herself wishes to speak. Tell them we are willing to surrender. Tell them we are willing to pay any price for peace. The council bowed and hurried to obey. Velthora sat alone in the great chamber and waited. She had gambled everything on one hope. That humans could be monsters when they needed to be, but that somewhere inside them, the people they used to be were still alive. She prayed she was right, because if she was wrong, her species would not survive to see another generation. 100 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Velthari Dominion, once the greatest empire in known space, no longer existed. Not because humanity had destroyed it completely, because it had collapsed from within. The other conquered species had watched the war closely. They had seen humanity, a species from one small world, break the unbreakable empire. They had seen the mighty Velthari beg for peace. And they had learned that the masters could bleed. Rebellion spread across the empire like fire through dry grass. Species that had been slaves for centuries rose up and fought for freedom. The Velthari, weakened by the war with humanity, could not stop them all. One by one, their conquered worlds broke away. Within 20 years, the Dominion was gone. The Velthari scattered to the far edges of the galaxy. They built small colonies on forgotten moons and remote asteroids. They hid from the universe that had once feared them, and they told stories. Old Velthari would gather young ones around dim lights and speak in whispers about the nightmare species, the humans, the creatures from the wet rock near the yellow star. They told stories of the revenants, the enhanced killers who felt no pain and no fear. They told stories of the ordinary humans who had fought with broken weapons and endless fury. They told stories of the dead worlds, the silent colonies, the empire that had crumbled. Never go toward that region of space, the old ones would say. Never attract their attention. Never give them reason to remember us. The young ones would listen and tremble. The fear would pass from generation to generation. It would become part of Velthari culture, a permanent scar on their collective memory. This was what humanity had wanted. Earth had rebuilt slowly. The war had killed billions. Entire continents were scarred and dead. But humans were good at surviving. They always have been. Cities rose from the ashes. Farms spread across the healing land. Children were born who had never known the sound of Velthari weapons. The Revenant program was quietly retired. The volunteers, the ones who had given up their humanity to save their species, were helped as much as possible. Some could not be saved. The changes were too deep, the monster too strong. They were given comfortable places to live out their days, watched by doctors and guards. But most of them found their way back. Slowly, painfully, they rebuilt the walls in their minds. They remembered how to feel guilt and fear and hesitation. They became human again. Sarah, the former kindergarten teacher who had walked through 3,000 Velthari soldiers, became a counselor. She helped other revenants adjust to peace. She never talked about what she had done during the war. But sometimes late at night, she would sit in her garden and stare at the stars with eyes that still held shadows. The galaxy formed a new order. Without the Velthari, the conquered species needed something to replace the Empire. They formed the Galactic Council, a body where every species had a voice. It was not perfect. There were arguments and conflicts and old hatreds that took generations to heal. But it was better than what had come before. The Council sent ambassadors to Earth. They wanted to understand the species that had changed everything. They expected to find a world of warriors, a civilization built on violence and conquest. They found something different. They found humans who painted pictures and wrote poetry. Humans who built gardens and played music. Humans who laughed easily and cried openly and loved without reservation. They found a species that was creative and curious and kind. The ambassadors were confused. These were the creatures who had killed 800 million Velthari? These gentle beings who shared food with strangers and helped each other without asking for reward. "You are not what we expected," one ambassador said to a human diplomat. The diplomat smiled. It was a warm smile, not like the cold smiles the Velthari had described. "We are exactly what we need to be," she said. "When we are at peace, we build and create and explore. We are artists and scientists and dreamers. But when we are threatened, when our families are in danger, we become something else. Something we do not like, but something we are very good at. The monsters you keep caged. Yes, we learned a long time ago that we carry darkness inside us. Every human does. The capacity for terrible violence. The ability to do things that would make other species sick with horror. We spent thousands of years learning to control it, to lock it away, to build civilizations where it would not be needed. And when the Velthari came, the diplomat's smile faded. For a moment, something old and cold flickered in her eyes. We opened the cages. We let the darkness out. We became the thing that the Velthari feared. And when the war was over, we locked it away again. We went back to being who we wanted to be. But the darkness is still there. It will always be there, waiting. The ambassadors reported back to the council. Their recommendation was simple. Treat humanity with respect. Be their friends. Trade with them. Learn from them. But never, ever give them reason to open those cages again. A memorial was built on Mars. A great structure of stone and crystal that contained the names of every human who had died in the war. Billions of names, carved in walls that stretched for kilometers. At the entrance, words were inscribed in every language that humanity had ever spoken. We do not seek war. We do not desire conquest. We wish only to live in peace, to raise our children, to explore the stars with wonder rather than fear. But know this, we remember everything. We forgive nothing. And if you come for our people, we will not stop until your grandchildren fear the dark. This is our promise. This is our warning. This is what we are. Visitors from other species came to see the memorial. They walked among the names and read the inscription. They left in silence, thinking about what it meant. Across the galaxy, a proverb spread among 1,000 species. Merchants whispered it in trading posts. Diplomats quoted it in negotiations. Parents told it to children at bedtime. The Velthari chose war. The humans brought something worse. They brought memory. And in the quiet corners of space, on forgotten moons and distant asteroids, the surviving Velthari looked toward the stars and felt the fear that would never leave them. They had been conquerors once, masters of 100 worlds. Now they were the lesson that the galaxy would never forget. They had chosen war. Humanity had brought something worse. Humanity had brought consequences that would echo through eternity. And somewhere on Earth, in a garden filled with flowers, a woman who had once been a monster sat in the sunlight and smiled. The war was over. The cages were closed. The darkness was sleeping. But it would never truly go away. It would wait, patient and eternal, for the day when humanity needed it again, and the galaxy prayed that day would never come.